Millennials are giving up the idea of owning a home. Well, quitters never win, as they say, right? All right. Well, it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. I don't know. I think that if you look at historically, if you want to be, wealthy, you should own a home, like at least one. But who knows? Maybe times have changed. Let's see.
Well, the pressure of owning a home is showing up in Americans' internet history. New Google Trends data shows that search activity for the words help with a mortgage hit the highest level since 2009 last month.
Yeah,
many Americans feel owning a home isn't attainable. 16% of...
Well, 2009 is also after, like you're already in the middle of that whole Great Recession business. That was already in the middle of it. It had already been tumbling, right? 2006 or 7 was like the peak of it. And then it just started coming down. I was still in Boston in 2009. I knew that I was moving to Los Angeles at the time. So I was like preparing myself in that way. Actually, before that, it was like the years before that, was like 2007, 2008, probably like 2008. I was at a point where I was kind of making a decision, like, okay, a couple of decisions. I almost bought a duplex in South Boston. That was, an option I was looking at, living in one and renting the other side, right? And then the other was I almost went to grad school. I applied to get into the master's program at NEC. And I remember I went in and I did the audition. If I remember correctly, I got in. I don't see why I wouldn't have gotten in. But after I went through with all of it, I had already decided, just forget all of that. I'd rather move to Los Angeles. Forget all this schooling. I've already been, forget all of it. Because I was thinking about my path. I was like, all right, if I do that, what am I going to do? I'm going to become one of those teachers at Berkeley who went to Berkeley and then NEC, and then I'm going to teach at Berkeley. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all, to be a college professor or any of that. It's just, I'm like, is that for me? Is that me? Do I want to do that? No, that's not what ended up happening. That's not what ended up happening. I'm more rebellious than that. It's because I was practicing and working so hard on music and like crazy and all that. I don't know. Anyways, so that's where I was in 2009.
People looking for a house since 2020 have abandoned their search entirely, especially millennials. But could there be hope with young people?
Okay,
Gen Z is now the most likely generation. And many Americans feel owning a home isn't attainable. 16% of people looking for a house since 2020 have abandoned their search entirely, especially millennials.
Okay, if you've been looking for a house to buy for 5 years, you're not serious about buying a house. I don't understand. It doesn't take 5 years to buy a house. Like it may take you that long to build up a down payment or something like, something like that. But like when you're ready to buy a house, it's not that hard to, go through the steps. You just go through it. Even I remember the first time I was going through it, it's like most important thing is get approved for a loan. Just go get approved for a loan and then go get a realtor. Those people are going to want to make the deal go through and make the sale that they'll help you, but you also have to want to do it. I don't know. I don't understand. Every single time I've bought a house, which has now been 4 times, it's not that big a deal. The hardest house was actually my first one in Florida, my third house. That was the hardest. And that was because it was peak hysteria. Everything was getting nabbed in 2 seconds and going over asking, and there just wasn't, ultimately the bottom line was there wasn't a lot of inventory, and it made it really difficult. And that's a big difference from what we have today, like a massive difference. I think that we lucked out on the house that we did get. We didn't overpay for it. I think that we got a good price. We got it less than what they were asking, and we got concessions because, the house needed some work, and we knew that going in. But now Like when we bought this house, it was way easier. Like way easier. Way easier. And we had more bargaining power because there was more inventory, and sellers were, when we bought this house, and also still are, way more eager to make a deal, like figure out how to close and just get rid of the house. And especially down here in Florida, there's a lot of like older people. Like this house was owned by older people. I think that the guy who owned it was going into some kind of home situation, and the kids were getting it, his kids were getting it, and they didn't want to deal with, they just get rid of it. We don't want to deal with it. Okay, fine. They didn't pay for it. So they're just like, whatever, just get rid of it. Yeah, we'll take your offer. Yeah, okay. All right, fine. We'll give you that also. Stuff like that. As a buyer, you want those deals. You definitely want those deals. You're looking for that because that's how you're able to buy equity, right? Which I'm lucky I've been able to do twice now.
But could there be hope with young people? Gen Z is now the most likely generation to be on the prowl for a house.
But yet the numbers are showing that baby boomers are the ones that are actually buying up all the housing. In all past videos, that's what I've been seeing, that the numbers are showing. The people that are actually buying houses are like 60 plus. That's baby boomers. That's interesting. Gen Z, what are they, like in their 20s? Do they have enough money to do that? I mean, I didn't when like I said, I almost bought that duplex, and then I decided to move to California instead. So maybe.
So Steve Forbes, I come to you on this. Housing. We talk about this all the time. People giving up, people losing hope, mortgage rates. I think it's sad when young America says I can't do a house. And I'm not saying everybody in the world wants to buy a house.
Just in general, if anything, is a really
such an essential
bad
building block of growing up, of owning something substantial.
It's a bad
attitude.
What
do you make of this? And where do you think the hope lies right now?
Well, I think the hope lies in several things. One is a stable dollar, so we get low interest rates, more tax cuts, so people have more to keep, and also you get a more ginned up economy. Very basic. And the other thing I hope the administration will be focusing on more is pinpointing areas of the country where regulations prevent housing developments from being brought to fruition.
Okay, hang on a second. A more stable dollar? All right, here's DXY. Straight down. This is year to date. All right, let's do 3 years. I mean, from here to here. I mean, it looks like it was mostly 2024. I wish, can we go further? Can we go even further? Ooh. So it was even lower all down here. And it's bounced since. I wish we can go even further than this. This is, okay, well, this is from 1986. That's really not that bad. Interesting. I mean, all the stories right now is just the dollar's tanking. The dollar's tanking. Definitely not stable.
Fruition. Contrast a piece of Texas with a piece of California and say, why does it take 3 months in Texas to do a housing development versus 3 years or 30 years in California? Since we have a governor out there who has aspirations, let him explain why California is the most expensive place to buy a house, how you can get a mansion in a place like Florida or somewhere else, even with the prices today, and get you a closet in California. Then they always say, oh, we'll have public housing and affordable housing. It's government that made housing unaffordable. Yeah. So highlight the information, and that'll put pressure to get some change.
I think that while that may be accurate, he's making it political. Obviously, this is news and everything, and not even just news, just everything now is political, is made political. And sometimes that's a good thing, and other times it's unnecessary, a bad thing, and annoying. But it's like, okay, yeah, that's always going to be the case. Like in terms of what he's saying, like, okay, like in California, it's really expensive and there's a hindrance. It's so difficult to build. People know it and people get it. That's why they vote with their feet, right? You get it. That's why so many people are. That's why now, for the first time in whatever, California is having net negative migration, which is not a good thing for them. right? It's not just the jobs and the companies that are leaving there. It's the people, because they can't afford it. There's more and better opportunities elsewhere. All kinds of reasons. For me, it was a multitude of things. It was also family stuff. You know, it's different for everybody, basically. I do think that if you want, and I say it all the time on here, nothing says that you have to buy a house where you are. If you can't buy a house because you live in Los Angeles, and just as an example, just to follow what we're talking about, and this was true for me, right? If you can't buy a house because you live in Los Angeles, but you can buy a house in Palmdale, or for me, it was Joshua Tree area, Landers, Yucca Valley, High Desert, and you're willing to make that exchange, like, okay, yeah, I'll drive further, but then I'll at least be able to buy a house and own a house and do what I want on my property. Make that exchange. I did, and it was definitely the right move. Absolutely, positively, right? That buying that one house has now led me to that many houses, all because I bought the first house. Renting has not allowed me to buy any houses. In you know what I'm saying? Like, and we'll see, that may be changing because they're talking about having rental payments and rental history as part of qualification, which honestly I think is a good idea. I think that's a really good idea. It doesn't make any sense to me that you can afford paying $2,000 in rent, but not be able to qualify for a house and your payment is $1,800 a month or even $2,000 a month. You know, like I can get where it's like, well, it would need to be less than your rental price because there's other things that come into play when you own a house. You need to pay for everything. You can't just call your landlord, right? And those things are expensive. They're not cheap. They're thousands of dollars now. It's not, you know, you're calling your landlord. You know, it's not like car repairs. It's, depending on what it is, it's way more expensive. So I can see like, okay, well, if your rent payment is $2,000, you can qualify for something $1,600 or less in terms of a payment. I can see how that would be a concession. Like, okay, in order to make this happen, it needs to be like 70% or 80%, let's say, of what you were paying. You can qualify for stuff like that. Yeah, it's all whatever. I do think it would be a good thing, though.
No, Larry, you're the affordability guy.
No, this is a brilliant riff.
Okay,
brilliant riff.
You get an A+ in that riff, Steve.
A+, 100% on every count. The only thing I'd add to it is work harder. Work harder. They don't work hard enough. They just don't. I mean, that's what every survey, everybody's talking about. You know, that's what the late Charlie Kirk talked about. Work hard, and we're going to get to the.
But I think we're going to get an environment. You see it on the religious side where people are going to be open to that kind of message. Ben Franklin is coming back again. Penny saved is a penny earned, and people compound interest and the like, and have real life stories. You can do it, but get the barriers out of the way. When you have barriers, people pull back, remove the barriers, and suddenly things come to life you didn't expect.
I agree.
Sometimes when there are barriers, people pull back, but at the same time, if there are barriers and you want it enough, you look for the way. I've been on both sides of that. I wanted to own it, just to keep it with housing. I wanted to own a house for a long time before I bought a house. And I went to different banks and different brokers and people who basically were saying, you'll never get a loan because I'm a musician, you're self-employed, your taxes show you don't make any money, right? And I needed to figure all that kind of thing out. Like, okay, well, I don't have a W-2, I have 1099s, and I write stuff off. Like, so that's how I was doing it, but they weren't saying, well, you need to do things this way if you want to buy a house or whatever. So I needed to figure all that out. And ultimately the answer was, I was talking to the wrong people. I needed to find the person, the broker, that would say yes to my situation. And I eventually did, luckily. And then from there, I've just found people that say yes to my situation. It's like, okay, yeah, we can work with you. And for that first deal, that also meant that my interest rate was way higher, multiple points higher than what the interest rate was at the time. My first interest rate was almost 7.5. This was in 2017. I'm pretty sure I've looked it up before. The interest rates back then were like in the 4s, and I got 7, almost 7.5. But I bought a house that I can afford with a payment that I can over afford. Right? I've said all this before, right? Point being, if you want something bad enough, you find a way to do it. You find a way. You go around the barrier. You find your way around it. You have to be creative. You can't just, if people just say no to you and you just accept it, then you're not going to get what you want in life.
Totally agree. But work is godly. We're going to get to that in the last segment, I guess, which is
we will get to that indeed.
But they do need to work harder. But Steve's right. Look, I was just checking. The 30-year mortgage rate is 6.36 on this sheet, anyway. So, it was over 7 a year or two ago, I think. So you're making some progress, but it's not all. I mean, Steve is right. It's not all. If you lower tax rates and get better economic growth and hence better job opportunities, if the dollar was reliable, all those things would probably help.
Can I jump on the work harder bandwagon for a second? Because not only do they need to work harder, they need to adjust their expectations. And I think social media has been a big problem with what the expectations are. It shows you all these people who are affluent and living in opulence, and kids see that and they want that. So what do they do? They go take their disposable income. They're spending it on trips and stuff so that they can replicate those posts. And what they should be doing is saving that money, Larry, and buying the S&P 500. Yeah. But they're not doing that. And so they don't understand that most people, the people who did it in the generation before them, they worked hard, they saved, they did the right thing, they tried to invest so that they could get ahead. That's the disconnect that I'm seeing with this.
Okay, and there's a lot that's in this, because there's a lot of people. I'm a millennial, right? So is my wife. We're on opposite ends of millennials, right? I'm an old millennial. She's a young millennial. And there's a certain amount of this that a lot of people, a lot of millennials and younger would probably say, well, we weren't taught this. Who were the people that would have or would have had to teach us this? That older generation that she's talking about. And I'm not saying that millennials are off the hook for any of this, right? Because you, at some point, you need to take the reins yourself. I mean, both of us, me and my wife, are way old enough to be past the point of, hey, you should have been taking the reins for your own life a while ago, right? Right? So you can't just keep blaming, right, on your parents or whatever. It's not going to help you in the long run. It may make you feel that I don't even see how it would make you feel better about your situation. It would make you feel more despair, and that's a negative. That's bad. That's not going to help you at all. That is a disempowering position to be in, and it's not positive. You have to look for ways and be positive and choose the positive routes, right? Playing victim is not positive. Being a victim and continuing to act with a victim mentality is not positive. Bad things happen. How do you get up and move forward? Those are the hero stories that people feel good about and look up to and are empowering. So you have to bring more of that to your life. You have to. I don't like that they talked about like just losing hope and all that stuff. That's so disempowering to me. I hate that stuff. I'm like, you can't. I just feel like I'll never lose hope for things in my life, because that's what keeps you going forward. You have to have that in you. You have to have it in you. And I think that they are trying to say a lot of like, okay, you need to change a lot of what's in you. They're saying it by saying work harder. They're saying you're not working hard enough. Maybe they feel like they are working hard. There's a lot of millennials and younger people that think that they are working so incredibly hard. They're working harder than ever, and they're working harder than previous generations who had it easier. That is a mind, right? That is a thought. That's a mind state. That's a thing that's out there. Are they wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But most importantly, you need to not dwell. The thing that's going to make you win is you can't just dwell on, well, you guys had it easier and this and all things of the past. You need to go from where you are right now and forward. You can't just dwell on, this happened to me when I was in second grade and this happened to me, all these types of things, right? I had it more different. I didn't grow up with, all that stuff. At some point you have to. You can't harp on that stuff or you're never gonna get out. You're never going to. But I see both sides. It's very interesting, but the most important thing to me is you need to choose how you're going to think about it. And that is going to either empower you or disempower you. Is disempower you a word? What's a better way of saying disempower? Right, just less confident. Yeah. Are you going to be empowered or oppressed? It's your choice is what I'm saying. It's your choice. To me, the answer is obvious. The answer is super obvious.
Generation, they kind of want it all. And we showed the Vanity Fair cover of Zohran Mamdani, and most of his voters, they just want things for free. Government, you give it to me. I deserve to live in New York City fresh out of
nothing is free.
Of college, and I deserve, to live there nicely. At least that's what they think.
And no, you don't. And I've been saying it all these videos. You can't just think, oh, well, I need to live in New York City, or I always say Los Angeles because that's my example. There's nothing that says you're supposed to live there. You have to live there. And if you don't buy a house there, then you will never own a house. And that. No, there's nothing that says that. First of all, it doesn't even make sense a lot of the time. Like most of the time, it doesn't make sense to buy a house there. It probably is best to rent there, but maybe buy houses elsewhere. I know people who have bought houses in Los Angeles and also buy rentals elsewhere, right? They're not going to buy rentals in Los Angeles for a multitude of reasons, but for many reasons, it's because it's cheaper and you get better cash flow in other areas. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't always, you can't have that thinking. And again, this is where the barriers come up and you just quit. Right? But not just barrier and oh no, forget it. And then just get depressed about everything in life and start making poor decisions, like spending all of your money and like all this. I mean, sorry, this is turning into a gigantic rant. And all of this is kind of on purpose, right? Just based off of what they're talking about. We're not even halfway through the video yet. First of all, I hate Instagram. I've been on Instagram, but I stopped being active on Instagram a while ago, years ago, because I hate it. I think it's bad for people's mental health. I do. I'm not like a major like mental health type of person or whatever, even though I make music that is geared towards that. Actually, I just don't like mentally what Instagram does. It does it more than any other social media to me, in my view. So I don't participate in it because I'm not crazy about it. But so much of it is optics and it's not real. If you were on there, you would think that over half of your friends and half of the population, half the people that you follow on there make six figures. And that is statistically inaccurate. It's not true. We looked it up recently on a different video. 18% of the US population makes over six figures. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 people. That's not everybody. That's not majority. So, and I know people that make six figures. Most people I know don't make 6 figures. Making 6 figures does not say you're wealthy. It says you make 6 figures. That's basically it. I just don't I don't like the optics of Instagram because it leads you to potentially make bad decisions like this because you have this FOMO, and that's not good. Having that type of FOMO is really not good, especially when it's not real on the other side. Then it's dangerous. It's like manipulation, right? It's manipulative. That's really not good.
That he would do for them, and they're voting for that. And so they're just going down a path that it's really wrong in many, many ways, and nobody's shaking them and saying stop.
Maybe parents should read their kids again, The Tortoise and the Hare, and see who comes out on top.
It's not always pretty. Sometimes you make hard choices and you don't get to do stuff.
So let me throw right. I agree with you on the Mamdani voters, by the way, but let me just throw the other side of this out there, which is I do think there's a lot of Gen Z, younger millennials, who are working hard, but they do see home prices that are historically incredibly high right
I am
now.
saying that there are a lot of people that work hard.
It's a function of policy
difficult
choices. I'm throwing this line out to you, Dagan, to see if you want to bite on this bait.
And maybe they feel like, yo, I am working hard. I'm giving up everything. And it feels impossible. I get it. I get it. I think that there is that side also. You have to just keep going and know that things take time. When the heck did I buy my first house? How old was I in 2017? Was that 8 years ago? I was in my mid-30s. I was in my mid-30s when I bought my first house. I could have potentially bought earlier, but still, and I know a lot of people who are my age now who still don't have a house. Could they have had a house? Yeah, maybe. Everybody's situation is different, and maybe a lot of those people made wrong choices or just different choices, I should say. And they're like, no, I want to live over here, and that means I'm not going to own a house. I'm going to rent. So, and that's your choice. That's your choice. But don't complain.
I think if we had a Gen Z at this table, they'd say, wait just a second.
Why is it? Can I just ask, though, before we get to, sorry, Dave. First of all, home prices are coming down, but the big point is it all depends where you are. Mm-hmm. There are parts of this country that have very, very affordability homes.
Agreed.
And they're going to be in the red states, and they're going to be in the Sun Belt. They're not going to be in the New York suburbs.
Right.
I get that.
Huge.
But you don't have to, some New York co-ops are lovely, but if they're out of reach for a young person, don't go there.
Right.
Make choices. And by the way, job opportunities.
I just agree with that. I do.
This part of the country is sinking. It's just sinking. Stuff in the paper. They're going to start a stock exchange in Texas.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about those apples?
And Miami
They're going to start a stock exchange in Miami.
Yeah.
Okay. We used to have monopoly in New York about that.
Right. And there are areas that you can buy a house in Florida for $200,000 or less. You can. You freaking can. But it's not going to be in Miami. It's not. You want to drive there? Right? That may mean that you drive far, but at least you own a house, right? There's that give and take.
Yesterday, J.P. Morgan has more employees in Texas than it does in New York.
No, it's true. But some of those red housing markets are pretty. Those markets are hot, though.
But you just poke around, go down to the Carolinas, go down to Georgia. I'm just saying.
Tennessee.
The high price
opportunity
argument,
elsewhere.
That's a wealth argument to me. That's fine. I want my home prices to be solid, shall we say, solid. You want a piece of the rock? Buy the S&P index.
Yeah, I like it.
Vivek Ramaswamy was on the show a couple of days ago. Every month, every day, $10,000 over 50 years, you'll be a multimillionaire. Well before you retire, that kind of stuff. They have the Trump savings accounts, which was the Ted Cruz savings accounts. If newborns get $1,000, you got to invest
Start
it in
'em early.
the index. What's wrong with that?
And one of the other things is, why are we building houses the way we did 100 years ago? Technology, building codes, have they held us back in terms of making houses smarter, better, cheaper?
Dagan.
Maybe not. I think it depends.
I think Gen Z gets a bad rap. If you talk to my family members who run companies, they employ young people and they are mercenaries. They know what their worth is. They work their asses off. And if they don't feel like that they are used to their best abilities, they'll move on and get a different job. They'll get a better job. They'll get a job that pays them more money. And they know well enough not to buy a house when it is so wildly overvalued. They, quite frankly, are putting money into the stock market. That's one of the reasons the market has gone up so much. 45% of wealth is in stocks now. We said that last hour. And they see the cost of ownership, maintenance, insurance. Because of the housing boom, if you buy a house right now, you can't get anyone to work on it. I've been emailing.
On where you are.
I walked my talk and bought a house in the middle of the Midwest because I could get a house there for 1/3 of what that house would cost on the coast. But I still can't get carpenter to even answer an email because it's boom times.
Did you buy
probably
in the
call him,
Ozarks?
but yeah.
No.
It's one of my favorite TV series.
Ozark.
Ozarks.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
But I kind of grew up with, you got to be careful where you buy a house in parts like that because it might be near a meth lab, and then the meth lab goes ba-boom, and
Didn't think of that, did
the
you?
new wing
No, I
on
didn't.
your house gets shorn off.
They had a lot of episodes on that.
So
That's more Breaking
I
Bad.
encourge people.
That could literally be
We are
anywhere.
a
Come on, man.
mobile
Ridiculous.
economy.
Do you go down to the Ozarks a lot, or for this house?
No.
Larry, we can't do Ozark talk.
sorry.
We-
We're not
Yeah,
in time.
Jesus.
But we
what the
are.
heck?
I encourage people to not live on the coast.
Yeah.
I encourage people to. You can
Yeah.
go to Indiana, and live in a small town. There's a beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright house for sale in Omaha. I told somebody to go look at it. Now, it's expensive, but it's one of the most glorious homes.
It might
I
not
would
be
move
for
to
sale for
Omaha
long.
before I'd move to Manhattan now if I had it all to do all over again 30 years.
Okay. All right. There it is. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what they're saying towards the end of this in terms of look elsewhere. There's opportunities everywhere, especially, listen, when I finished college and then I was taking improv lessons with this teacher outside of college, right after college. And he was saying, and this was in the mid 2000s, probably 2005, literally 20 years ago. And he was like, you could do this from Kansas now with the internet. He was saying it back then. That is more accurate now than ever. That is more accurate now than 20 years ago. It just is. There's more people doing it and making a lot of money on the internet now than ever. And if you live, yes, there are certain things that you have to be in Los Angeles, right? You have to be there. You have to be in the place where the people are, where, depending on what you're trying to do. But if you're good enough and you make enough noise and you have enough attention on you and you create those relationships via the internet and those connections, you could fly out. You could drive out. As they're saying, you are super mobile, more mobile now than ever. People have been moving around. You're not just stuck to your area. I mean, when I was growing up, everybody in my family lived in a specific area. And now it's like that area has expanded. that area has expanded. I don't even have that big of a family, right? If I had a big family, the expansion would probably be even greater, I imagine. But yeah, I just don't think, I think that there's a lot of opportunity elsewhere. You don't need to live in the big city. You can live in a smaller city, a more affordable city, a quaint city that isn't going to eat up as much of your time in terms of traffic and getting around and all of that, and also your money in terms of price of everything. There's so many great places in the United States. So many. Take your pick. I know that also a lot of it does depend on what you do for work. I get it. But also, for most people, especially coming up, what you do for work doesn't stay the same, right? It changes, it shifts. People don't stay at the same job for 40 years like they used to. That's not as normal. It's not as much of a thing as it used to be for all kinds of reasons. So don't box yourself in. You never know. You never know. That move could change your life. It could have been the best thing you ever did.